An independent editorial defense analysis focused on Australia's strategic environment.
The retirement of the General Dynamics F-111C did not merely signify the end of an airframe life cycle. It marked a fundamental contraction in the independent strike horizon of the Royal Australian Air Force. For decades, this platform, affectionately known as the Pig, provided Canberra with a unique strategic asset. It disproportionately elevated its standing in the Asia Pacific region. It possessed the ability to deliver heavy ordnance loads deep into the archipelagic screen to Australia's north, and crucially, return without the absolute necessity of aerial refueling. The lingering debate surrounding its departure and the subsequent acquisition of the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning II is often reduced to a simplistic comparison of speed versus stealth. Yet a systems-based analysis suggests the core issue is far more profound. It concerns a shift from a platform-centric doctrine of independent projection to a network-centric model that relies heavily on enabling assets and coalition integration. The absence of a direct successor to the F-111C exposes a tension between the geographic reality of Australian defense strategy and the technical limitations of available modern combat aircraft. Geography remains the immutable constant in Australian strategic planning. The tyranny of distance dictates that for a defensive posture to be effective under the current strategy of denial, the Australian Defence Force must hold potential adversaries at risk thousands of kilometers from the continental coastline. The F-111C was arguably the last platform that aligned perfectly with this requirement in a standalone capacity. Its combat radius, extending beyond 2,000 kilometers with a meaningful payload, allowed Australian planners to calculate risk based on the airframe itself. In contrast, the introduction of the F-35A Lightning II and the A-18F Super Hornet has fundamentally altered this calculus. While the F-35A brings unprecedented situational awareness and survivability through low observability, its internal combat radius of approximately 1,000 kilometers necessitates a heavy reliance on the KC-30A multi-role tanker transport to achieve similar strategic reach. This introduces a critical vulnerability into the force structure. In a high-intensity conflict where adversary long-range air-to-air missiles are active, the tanker becomes a high-value target that must be protected. Now, this effectively tethers the strike fleet to a vulnerable logistical umbilical cord that the F-111C largely operated without. This capability gap has forced a doctrinal pivot. The reliance has shifted from the range of the aircraft to the range of the weapon. The acquisition of systems such as the AGM-158 JASSM-ER and the rigorous pursuit of the long-range anti-ship missile indicate an acceptance that the launch platform can no longer penetrate deep into contested airspace to deliver gravity bombs. This transition mitigates the range deficit of the Super Hornet and F-35A, but introduces an economic and logistical asymmetry. The F-111C could deliver affordable iron bombs in sustained campaigns, whereas long-range standoff munitions cost millions of US dollars per unit. They are subject to finite stockpiles and complex industrial supply chains. The shift is from a reusable, high-volume delivery model to a single-use, high-cost precision model. While this aligns with the lethality required to neutralize sophisticated integrated air defense systems, it raises valid questions about the ability of the Royal Australian Air Force to sustain high-tempo operations over time without rapid depletion of ordnance inventories. The interim solution provided by the Super Hornet further highlights the challenges of balancing immediate capability against long-term modernization. purchased as a bridge to mitigate the risk of F-111 retirement and F-35 delays. The Super Hornet has proven to be a capable multi-role asset, but it remains bound by the same range limitations as the Lightning II. Its value proposition lies in its ability to act as a weapons truck behind the stealthy screen of the F-35A. Yet this teaming arrangement does not solve the fundamental problem of projection across the vast maritime approaches. The reliance on this mix of tactical fighters suggests that Australian air power has optimized for survivability and interoperability within a US-led coalition, rather than maintaining the niche independent long-range strike capability that defined the F-111 era. This trade-off enhances the political and technical integration with the United States, but potentially constrains unilateral options in scenarios where coalition support might be absent or limited. Emerging technologies offer a potential, albeit unproven, pathway to reclaiming this lost strategic depth. The development of the MQ-28 Ghost Bat by Boeing Defence Australia represents a novel attempt to break the cost curve and range constraints of crewed platforms. Designed to operate as a loyal wingman, the Ghost Bat serves as a distributed extension of the air combat system. By potentially carrying extra fuel or sensors, and eventually weapons, it could artificially extend the combat radius of the F-35A, or act as a forward-deployed asset that assumes risks unacceptable for a crewed airframe. This reflects a maturation in the Australian defence industry, moving from pure acquisition of foreign military sales equipment to the co-development of systems tailored to local strategic needs. However, the operational maturity of such autonomous systems remains years away. Integrating them into a seamless kill chain presents significant software and doctrinal hurdles that have yet to be fully cleared. The recurrent speculation regarding the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider as a spiritual successor to the F-111 underscores the persistent desire within the strategic community for a true long-range penetrator. The B-21 represents the only existing platform that combines the range, payload, and stealth required to replicate and exceed the F-111C mission profile in a modern anti-access area denial environment. Nevertheless, the barriers to such an acquisition are formidable. The sheer unit cost, likely exceeding $700 million, combined with the stringent secrecy and support infrastructure required by U.S. regulations, places it at the very edge of fiscal and political feasibility for a middle power. Pursuing such a capability would likely demand the cannibalization of other critical programs, forcing a choice between a boutique strike force and a balanced multi-domain military. It becomes evident that the search for a direct successor to the F-111C is a pursuit of a ghost. The era of a single platform solving the strategic range problem has likely closed. It has been replaced by a complex system of systems approach. The current architecture relies on a synthesis of stealthy sensor nodes, standoff precision munitions, vulnerable aerial refueling support, and emerging autonomous partners. This configuration offers higher survivability and lethality per sortie, but sacrifices the operational flexibility and sustained volume of fire that the F-111C provided. Australia has not failed to find a successor because of incompetence, but rather because the changing character of warfare and the proliferation of advanced air defense systems have rendered the medium bomber concept largely obsolete without the protective cloak of extreme stealth or standoff range. The strategic question facing Canberra is no longer about finding a better plane. It is about whether the current aggregated system can generate sufficient credible threat to deter aggression across the expanse of the Indo Pacific without breaking the bank or the logistics chain.